Great. Off to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Bhartendu. I lead telecom infra projects in Europe and Middle East. And today we are going to talk about telecom infra projects, OpenRAN project group. And I have Andreas Gladish, VP Emerging Technologies DT with me. So I'll start the discussion, tell you what TIP is, and then what OpenRAN activity we are doing in TIP. We'll talk about the process of TIP. And then I'll hand over to Andreas to talk a lot more detail about what exactly happening in the DTs, labs, and whatever plans other than OpenRAN. There are many other technologies. So I'll start with my first slide. What is Telecom Infra Project? So for those who are not familiar with TIP and what it is and what it is focused on, Telecom Infra Project is a global community, a collaborative community which is intended to accelerate the development and deployment of open, disaggregated, standard-based technology solution. And this span across access, transport, core technologies. The model at the bottom of the slide, together we build, deploy, and together we build, test, and deploy, is very, very intentional in the sense that we are not a telecom social club where we hang out together in a boardroom discussion, go for some drinks. We are not even engaged in developing standards. We are an execution body, which is very well aligned with standard bodies like ORAN, 3GPP, and we focus on execution on ground. How do we how do we make these things into production? How we make these open disaggregated technologies possible to be a commercial reality? This is our objective, and something similar to what OCP has done for the data center space in compute and storage. TIP is having a journey towards telecom. It's a OCP of telecom. So this is kind of a collaborative community where we have OEMs, technical technology providers, system integrators, and now we are seeing a lot of interest from policymakers to join this momentum. Then coming to what is the current situation in telecom market. All telecom operators in the world are facing a unique challenge where they have to increase their coverage footprint, either by densifying into urban areas or going to more and more rural areas, rolling out new services, 5G is coming, and so on and so forth. And that translates into adding more sites to their network. And when I say number of sites, that means additional capex. And then more difficult is the additional incremental OPEX, which comes onto their headache. And expanding networks is extremely cost intensive. Why it is so is one of the reasons we have seen in past is telecom networks have been usually driven by single vendors, fully integrated stack. And the way Telecom Infra Project is approaching this problem and the way we think about solution is having open, disaggregated networks. We are actually working towards multi-vendor disaggregated networks where hardware can come from vendor X, software can come from vendor Y, and they will be connected by open interfaces. And the combination of software hardware disaggregation and open interfaces will help this industry in three most important ways. First is more and more players will come in the play from small scale OEMs, startups, and then they will make the supply chain more sustainable with growing competition. Second is acceleration in innovation will happen, and that will drive improvement of network economics. So this is our hypothesis, and we thought that open and disaggregated networks is the solution of the ongoing challenges. Now coming to the process part of TIP, and then I will go into the OpenRAN piece. If you look at the top half of this slide, the collaboration across all our operational processes, from the left side, idea till the deployment. So what do I mean by idea? So idea is what are the use cases? TIP brings all the partners together, MNOs, OEMs, SIs, and then we brainstorm around the idea. What are the use cases? Which are the challenges which are like on higher priority from an MNO? Based on that idea, we go to a definition phase. And then we look for the pre-existing standards definition which are available. We work very closely with alliances like ORAN or 3GPP who has defined some standards already, and then collect more technical specification of a given use case. Then moving to the build phase, which is like forming alignment with the technology providers. Now the play of OEMs or those startups come into play. Based on the requirements which has come from MNOs, we sit together with the OEMs who are ready to comply to those requirements and ready to build the products which are completely open and disaggregated. Then we move to the next phase, which is testing. And so far we have seen a lot of unilateral testing happening across the globe, all the large scale MNOs doing their own testings. But now we are actually working on how we make this testing process very efficient and in a collaborative manner, where Deutsche Telecom, BT, Vodafone, Telefonica coming together in a lab and testing things. This is a very unique and new stuff. I think Andreas will talk a lot more about it in his presentation. Then moving to next step, releasing. Once we have rigorous testing done, once we have enough confidence on the technologies which we have produced, then it goes for a commercial GA release, ready for deployment, and then go for massive deployment. So TIP plays role right from idea till deployment. We are working on 14 technologies, and OpenRAN is one of them. Each technology is called a project group, and there are multiple subgroups underneath. So if you look at the bottom half of the slide, which says OpenRAN subgroups, one half is component subgroups. There's a team which is focused on white box RUs, radio units. And they are looking at all aspects of RUs, right from ODMs, OEMs, to contract manufacturers, to silicon vendors, each layer of contributors in RU. Then the second group is white box CU and DU, distributed unit and centralized unit. There's a third group which is focused on AI ML use cases for massive MIMO, for radio resource management, for SON. And this subgroup is called Radio Intelligence and Automation, RIA. And on the right side, we have some segment subgroups. One segment subgroup is focused on outdoor macros, and the other subgroup is focused on indoor small cells. So under OpenRAN umbrella, we have these 5 subgroups which are active, and each subgroup is co-led by 1 or 2 OEMs across the globe. And then coming to this slide where I talked about the OpenRAN architecture, we are talking about RU, DU, and CU disaggregation, all standard open interfaces between them, right from front haul, mid haul, back haul. Open APIs going towards NMS and other servers, and then all open interfaces. And this ecosystem is quite strong. Like you can see 3 pillars. Right from the MNOs, you can see prominent MNOs of the world are kind of contributing. Their requirements are walking with us in this journey. You can see Vodafone, Telefonica, China Mobile, MTN, Sprint. So MNOs across the globe. Then we have partners like Mavenir, Altiostar, Parallel Wireless. On RU side, we have Comba, KMW, MTI, and each layer of partners are kind of working with us. And then the most important is system integrators, Tech Mahindra, IBM, because they see a huge value in aggregating all this disaggregated technology. So all in all, TIP OpenRAN ecosystem is like building a lot of traction in the market. Now we are seeing more and more announcement coming out of commercial deployments of OpenRAN. And on the background, we are working with partners like DT to strengthen the interop testings and integration challenges. So this is something from my side. I will hand over to Andreas to talk more specific about what exactly we do on field and what we are doing in Berlin with DT. I will be available for tons of questions if you have at the last of the session. Over to you, Andreas.
Yeah, so thank you, Bhatandu. And yeah, let's start with a recap what the disaggregated RAN is about. So disaggregated RAN will enable more flexibility of combining solutions from multiple vendors. And open fronthaul is the first step because separation of RU and DU with standardized open interfaces will allow new entrants to the market. So, and this is the reason why DT started the ORAN project that separates hardware software and disaggregates DU and RUs with standard open fronthaul. And we did that along with major telecom companies like AT&T and others. And disaggregation in general requires a new approach, how to specify, but more importantly, how to test and integrate the different components. And DT is not capable of reaching such goals by ourselves alone. Such approach requires a cooperation with a lot more open and many different communities. So that's why we think it's very important to cooperate with ORAN, Open Compute Project, ONAP, ONF, and so on. And there was a liaison agreement between ORAN and TIP. We jointly announced that in February 2020, and that was assigned to the industry and brought a new level of industry cooperation, and that allowed us easy sharing of information, referencing specifications, and conducting joint testing and integration efforts. And one can easily join our activities in the framework of TIP process explained by Bartendo. And together we can be much more efficient than alone and drive innovations. So on the next slide, you can get an impression about our joint TIP community and ORAN lab in Berlin. So the key motivation of this aggregation is open innovation, which is lowering the barriers for new market players, and for sure, which is a capability for early joint testing. Our open test and integration lab is the first worldwide joint TIP ORAN lab, and it's ready for it's ready for testing. This lab facility allows to provide open multi-operator interoperability testing and also a joint integration. We can share the infrastructure for testing and validation, perform interoperability testing of TIP, ORAN, and other components, and support and cultivate the technical capabilities of system integration. As explained by Bartendo, this end-to-end integration and the understanding how the different components work together is very, very important for the disaggregated systems. So a little bit more in detail on the next slide. Deutsche Telekom, TIM, Telefonica, Orange, and British Telecom have already teamed up together with TIP and hosted this first joint ORAN TIP Plugfest in September 2020. The Plugfest has been focused primarily on open fronthaul interfaces, but was associated to transport options and for sure multi-vendor interoperability. As part of the event, products and solutions from 28 providers globally were utilized in 3 operator labs: Berlin hosted by DTAG, Torino hosted by TIM, and Madrid hosted by Telefonica. And this coordinated European community effort represents another step towards the development of a robust ecosystem of multi-vendor OpenRAN compliant wireless infrastructure systems. But there will become more, so please, Bartendo, can you go to the next slide? Because this was just the first step where network operators across Europe and across ORAN and TIP worked together and shared the results between the different communities. The key outcome of the Plugfest was feedback to ORAN and OpenRAN specifications, how to enable open interfaces for disaggregated RAN and how to improve the interfaces. It was a feedback to the community concerning the level and the status of the market. So TIP and ORAN collaborated to minimize the MNO testing and integration efforts. So as I said at the beginning, that this integration effort and to minimize that is very important. And last but not least, TIP is helping to accelerate the commercialization of OpenRAN, ORAN products and the diversification of the RAN supply chain. So this lab infrastructure is still growing. And we are at the beginning of the creation of that lab. So one idea to foster the cooperation of TIP and OCP is a proposal to utilize OCP compliant equipment in the lab. So that could be a subject of a later discussion. And I highly appreciate to get your proposals. And on the next slide, I also want to explain why is it not just limited to OpenRAN and ORAN. So this TIP ORAN Plugfest in Berlin was the first joint activity of our new lab. And the goal was to foster development of open disaggregated networking solutions in the context of radio. But fixed networks face the same and similar challenges. Therefore, a group of operators consisting of Vodafone, Telefonica, BT have kicked off an activity to apply a similar approach to OpenBNG. BNG is the broadband network gateway. A general white paper about the status of the industry has been published beginning of October, followed by the kickoff of the TIP OpenBNG group. And this group has already published a requirement paper, this BNG group, and we hope we can build up on the success of the group that has issued already RFIs for the distributed cell-site gateway and the disaggregated transponders, and we hope that we can, and we're pretty sure that we can issue an RFI for the OpenBNG in the next months, and the industry is invited to contribute. And our community and integration lab is open to host and perform plugfest of OpenBNGs as soon as the systems are available, for sure. So in addition, we want to extend the lab, and we are currently in the planning phase. And I can imagine that hardware suited for DU-CU separation and new cell site gateways can be subject of a cooperation with OCP, but there might be even more ideas, and I'm happy to discuss with you all those ideas. Thank you for the opportunity to talk, and happy to answer your questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andreas and Bartendu. Let's see if we have any questions.
Hello, hey, good morning, guys.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. Hey, cool. Good morning. Hey, nice background. You're out in the space.
I thought let's do something innovative today.
Hi, Stephen. Not sure if you had a question for those guys.
No. Am I in the wrong meeting? I'm supposed to be actually logging into the panel discussion.
Yeah, you're a little bit early, so just we'll put you on pause. We're just finishing up the previous session and moving into Q&A.
Sure. Sorry about that. I'm going to actually pause myself.
No problem.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
There is a question for the panelists in the Etherpad. Let me see if I can repeat it. How do you address security in an open disaggregated network? With software modules, how do you ensure that the software from vendor X, when the integrated, does not introduce vulnerabilities? With hardware modules, how do you ensure that the hardware is genuine from vendor Y and the firmware is authentic? So if Andreas or Bartendu want to take that question.
Yeah, I can start, and maybe Andreas can add to my answer. I think it's a valid concern which I keep hearing from all the MNOs who are actually thinking to deploy these technologies in commercial networks. Because when we talk about commercial networks, these security aspects, a lot of full interception, vulnerabilities are the prime concern areas. So I think the way we are tackling this is we are actually working on a specific security group, which will kind of validate all the solutions which TIP is working on through a list of security checks. And that work is in progress. Plus the OEMs who are coming in the play, have this responsibility onto them. The way we take this to market is, imagine if we have vendor X who's giving hardware and then vendor Y who's giving software. So we make sure that vendor X and Y have a complete interoperability plan, security plan in place before making that box commercially available. Because ultimately that is their bread and butter. They will not offer something which is like half proven to the market, which will kill their own image. So from tip side, we have set up a group which is looking at all the solutions from the lenses of security. But on the other side, our OEMs, both software, hardware, firmware vendors, are actually very vigilant to keep it completely like a single stack solution. Andreas, do you want to get into details of any of these transport boxes or something?
Yeah, so let me add a couple of points. So first of all, yeah, for sure, there is a permanent discussion about security issues in the disaggregated environment and with disaggregated network elements, and that is a valid concern for sure. On the other hand, that to fix that is one motivation of this kind of integration labs. So if we have the opportunity to build a reference end-to-end implementation, and then we can plug in different components and test them, then for sure a security question has to be, or the security has to be analyzed as well. And what we see from other ecosystems, Linux, etc., so that an open approach and much more sharing of results and inviting a lot more different companies is also an opportunity to fix all those security questions and security risks, and perhaps also faster than if you would work just with a single company or with a fully integrated solution. So yes, there's a risk, but there's also an opportunity. And the same is true for the modules. Yeah, it's clear. So we have to do the specification very carefully. And as I said, we need to build this reference implementation. And if we perform all those tests and understand this as a learning system, so then we can send back the learnings to the different ecosystems, improve the standards, improve the implementation, etc. Yeah, and it's right. The operators have to learn and they have to understand that we must play, that all the operators, including DT, have to play a new role there. So with the traditional approach, it will never fly. So, and I think this open lab is one contribution to step out of the traditional approach and to invite also smaller companies to collaborate in the domain of this relatively complex telco solutions.
Yeah.
So I have a question. You had the Plug Fest back in September. Do you have another Plug Fest scheduled here in the next 90 days or 3 to 6 months? What else is happening within the lab in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yes, okay. I cannot share the detailed planning, but we are currently in the phase to do this planning for the next year. What I definitely can disclose is that we will go for an open VNG Plugfest. So as soon as those components are available, we currently work with the ORAN Alliance to define the next Plugfest in the context of disaggregated RAN. And I'm not sure presumably it will be not in the next 3 months, but it will be in the first half of next year. And
yeah,
there are a lot of things more planned already, and we will publish that at the TIP website and at the ORAN website. So, but it's not finalized yet.
And maybe, Andrea, I can add a point here. It's a very important point of having Plugfest. This stuff is very near to what TIP is doing, because this is related to the first question. When we go and start testing technologies in the field or maybe in lab, then we learn faster. And PlugFest is meant for having all these interoperability testings done proactively before we hit a commercial deployment. So this is to accelerate that IoTs. And TIP is very much focused on PlugFest. We have a project group specifically. Few people are focused on PlugFest. And as Andrea said, we keep working on to the next plan. It is not clear today, but for sure in next half, we will have something for sure. One in Europe, maybe one in the US, one in APAC.
Yeah.
Great. Any more questions for Andreas and Bartendu? Mike, are you seeing anything? Archana, anything in the Ethernet pad?
Nothing else here.